economic model, it's like we often mention this analogy of a map, where like a map, it does not need to be faithful to reality to provide some insights. And a model, it's the same. Another good example that I like, it's like a fable, like this short story. In this short story, you have characters that could be, sometimes it's animals that represent human traits, like the king, is the lion, this kind of thing. And so it's not faithful to reality, but still at the end there is a moral, there is a lesson. And that's the point with economic model. You have some assumption. It does not mean to represent perfectly reality, but like it can give you some insights about what is the world. And I think that's the main point about economic modeling.
One thing I want to say, following on what Boris was saying just before, on what brought us to, I'm also an engineer, who decided to come to economics for similar motivations. Actually, I was also very interested in the environmental problem. And I think the first attitude is the one that Boris was saying, is like, what is this? I don't know if we are allowed to use, but what is this mess? Like, let's not use bad words. Like, what are you doing? Like, putting a function, like this function with like two goods, and like then you're saying that people decide based on that like seems so out of the place. And as the Boris was saying, like also people being just selfish, not interacting with their environment, not interacting with others. Like the first time you're exposed, and the knowledge also that you have before getting to economics is like, what's the use of this? But then like, and I think both of us got onto this path, and also you, Quentin, I think like we've already talked about it. Slowly by slowly, you start seeing like, wait, there's actually a lot of good things about it. And as Boris was very well saying, you can get a lot of amazing insights. So like today, if you analyze any market, whether it's the oil market, the food, like grains, it works really well to just like take these simple utilities with selfish people to get what we call a demand function, to know how much people are going to ask for products. For sure, there's like, it's really like when you see, like a curve with a lot of like asperities, but the trend is clear. And that's what the utility function gives you. It's like, yeah, there's of course people who like bought bread to give it to their friends or whatever. They didn't buy it for themselves. But all in all, if you pull it all together, this utility function gives you a good hint of the amount of bread that's going to be bought on the market, and the demand for this bread, or the demand for the wheat, or the demand for oil. And that's what we want to know at the end of the day, because we want to make projection. We want to understand how the market functions.
And depending on the application and what you want to do, what you want to understand, you need to navigate kind of and decide on different models. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also the beauty of economics. You have this toolbox and different models, and that's very cool.
I think that's kind of a reality in science. We can think about, people think, okay, it's a social science. It's really weird to represent preference of people with mathematical functions, but maybe with something that speaks or convince them more that you can represent it mathematically, you can go in physics. And then you're like, well, when you try to explain the movement of planets, you are with general relativity, but indeed it does not explain everything, right? If you go at the subatomic level and you want to explain the neutron, proton, the quarks behavior, you have another theory, and physicists are actually fighting since a long time to try to unify those. And here we actually pass kind of this step at the moment, because it seems way too complicated here, and most importantly, not necessarily useful to unify, because basically in different contexts you will apply different model that fits well the situation. Indeed, as we were speaking, as you were speaking, I was really thinking, what about homo moralis for the basic model of microeconomics with demand function? We really don't care. It's useless in that context, or at least I don't see why it will improve the prediction of the model. It doesn't work in that realm. But that's fine. That's fine.
I think your parallel with physics is fascinating. It's amazing, and that's also one thing I love with Boris, is like, we often, when we're talking, I mean, he will recognize that like we start talking about quantum physics and stuff, and I think it's an amazing example that you're giving, because I remember like when we studied quantum physics, so if you try to apply Newtonian physics to, like, as you said, like either like very cold or very small or like subatomic particles, it doesn't work, right? Like everything is like flawed, it doesn't work. And so like you would say, oh, Newtonian physics is not the good model, right? It's not good. It shouldn't be used. And you said like a lot of people try to like combine both, like adding like a quantum interaction to Newtonian physics. But these models, like, are not useful at all because they put too many things, and in the end they don't explain anything because they contain too many elements. And in the end, what you end up doing is like in these models is like, yeah, like the quantum element when you have like big stuff is just like negligible. So yeah, why are you putting it in the first place? You don't need it. And then the other way around, when you're looking at quantum things, the Newtonian element is like not very useful. And there's like this thing that they call like the limit of classical physics. And so you just like can look like, okay, what's the limit? If I'm beyond it, I just use the toolbox of quantum physics. If I'm before it, I'll just use Newtonian physics. And as you said, if you go to another level, you also need to use relativity. And so definitely there's like different models. As you said, like, why use Homo Morales for like looking at the demand on the market? It doesn't matter so much to look at the demand on the market of apples, but it matters for electricity.
What makes economics very different than physics in this case, it's when you pick your model, there is a part of subjectivity. I think it's important to recognize that we all have our bias and preconception about the world, and when we decide on a model, I mean, we bring those conception into it. It's not like, for instance, I don't know, depending on the it's like what is it called, like in physics, like depending on the distance, like the size of what you're looking at, maybe you switch between model or the other. Here it's really depends on what you also believe, in a sense, like, and that's
and what you want to look at also. Just to say, like, I'm not saying physics and economics are the same thing, and I would never say that. I think if you want to just keep this discussion, because it's a very classical discussion among economists, I think there are two things that will never be found in economics that are found in physics. It's the invariance of time and space. You take a particle like a molecule or like an atom of carbon in Australia in the 18th century, it's the same as a particle of carbon in France today, which is not the case in econ. Like the context varies, a lot of things varies, as we said, like the level of morality, the utility, etc. So invariance of time and space are not to be found in economics. So definitely there will be choices to be made. It's not comparable, but just to say that, different, like if we accept a difference in models in physics, we can also accept it in economics.